let's talk just a little bit more about housing supply. In general, the supply of housing is going to be determined by the relative cost of land, labor, and capital, or materials needed to build those houses. So that means that if the cost of the inputs goes up, then supply will likely go down. And the way we observe what's happening in the housing markets is to look at housing starts and sales of existing homes. And that gives us an indication of what's happening in the housing market. Now, when we're trying to differentiate among MSAs and determine the best place to invest in residential housing, then there are some considerations within that geography that we might want to analyze. And so those are on this exhibit. And these are the factors that, when you think about it, the home buyers are looking at. What makes a good neighborhood? How good are the schools? What's the crime rate? Are there green spaces? What does the housing market tell us in terms of, is it a hot market? Is it cooling off? And so these are a lot of the factors that we'll look at when we do a market analysis. What about the utilities? In some parts of Birmingham, Alabama, where I live, certain neighborhoods are on sewer and certain are on septic. And so because of the history of the sewer system and the cost related to it, a lot of people prefer to be on on septic instead of on sewer, even though there's a cost related to cleaning out your septic tank. For a lot of people, that's cheaper and just better than being on the city sewer system. What about the size of the submarket? There are some discussion about the optimal size of a city. So are we experiencing urban sprawl in a particular neighborhood or an area making it less attractive? What about healthcare facilities? That's another issue with municipalities, or at least the suburban areas that grow too quickly for the infrastructure to catch up. How long would it take you to get to the emergency room? And so that is a factor that some people want to consider in their residential investments. What about building codes and zoning or insurance rates? So insurance rates will be an issue if you're looking at properties that are in floodplains or in areas that are prone to tornadoes or hurricanes and other types of natural disasters. What about noise levels? Are you close to an airport or not so much construction because that's temporary, but some other type of ongoing, I don't want to call it a nuisance, but noise generating location. And environmental. So, we probably have all heard stories about cleanup sites and Superfund sites. So, is that an issue that may impact property values, or may have deeper effects like health issues for the residents in the long run? And then transportation. If are you close to intermodal bus, train, airlines, etc., or is there public transit? Is it easy to get around? Some people like to measure walkability, and walkability is this notion of within a certain range, how many restaurants, stores, libraries, schools, and so on are nearby. And so it gives you a sense of whether a location is walkable or car dependent, because more and more People want to be able to walk to places instead of having to use their car because that makes it less expensive because I'm not relying on a car or public transportation to get where I need to go. And so another issue with these public goods that we've been talking about that are attributes that impact house prices is the fact that there is this capitalization effect that relates to the quality of these services, because if you think of these public goods as public services that the residents receive relative to the taxes that they pay, then if I, as a homeowner, perceive that the services or benefits that I receive are worth more than the taxes that I pay, then I am going to receive a net benefit. And so the result of that net benefit is I'm willing to pay more. And so that's where we see the price appreciation, because it's worth it to me to receive these goods. It's worth it to me not to have to drive my car to the grocery store, or to be able to walk to the park, or leave my door open because the crime rate is so low, or whatever it is that the services are that I value, that results in price appreciation. And so we call this a capitalization effect. Again, it's when the quality of the public services that we receive relative to the taxes that we pay for those services result in a net benefit. So lastly, when we're talking about these submarkets and locations, so we're really drilling down in our analysis, then the last thing is actually pricing property. And so there are a number of methods that are used to price property. Those include the sales comparison approach, where you select properties in that same submarket or in close proximity to the property that you're trying to price, and then you look at the values of those comparable properties, look at the differences between your property and those properties, and then you estimate the value accordingly. The cost approach estimates the cost to reproduce the structure, and you don't factor in depreciation or anything, but then you add the value of the land to get to an overall value. And then the income approach is where you compare residential property that are being rented for income, and you use that rental income as an estimate of value.